Rap has long been criticized for its violent and misogynistic lyrics. It's been accused of exciting those negative attitudes in its listeners. Fans have harshly pushed back, saying that artists deserve artistic freedom, and any observed violence is purely due to the realities of low socioeconomic status. Do you think that artists deserve no blame at all? Isn't it reasonable to say that people are generally influenced by the media they absorb? And if that's the case, shouldn't rap be heavily restricted? So this isn't a new argument. You've all heard it before. I mean, you've heard, especially the rap that ends up on radio. It's an experience. It's an experience. And so for many years, people have been talking about this. I've been saying that something needs to be done. Walmart doesn't even sell, I don't think, rap, right? Like Walmart doesn't even do that. Yeah.
They sell clean versions, or they sell specific artists that are just like very like
clean,
easy listening
versions.
You have to pay the same price for the clean version.
Okay.
You should get at least like 30% off.
No. Yeah, exactly, right? All right, anyway. So I wanted to do this. Unexpectedly, we have a high amount of women to be a part of this. I'm actually very excited. So we'll start with my man Wiggle. Now, this is why you're here. Don't disappoint. Opening statement.
Yeah, so has rap long been criticized for its violent misogynistic lyrics? Yeah, like there are violent and misogynistic lyrics in some rap. Like I definitely, like, it'd be stupid to say no. Like it'd be completely bad faith. Yeah, you definitely listen to music that has like misogynistic lyrics and often violence. That's some of like when people talk about 90s boom bap rap, etc. Like that's kind of like what you're listening to, and like that's glorified a lot. It's been accused of inciting these negative attitudes in its listeners. Yeah, there's got to be like some people that are like listening to this music, and it's music kind of creates almost like a vibe. You're listening to a song and then it gets you thinking about some stuff. So I'm sure there's people that like listen to this music and then they get like, it incites some negative attitude in some people. Same way you listen to Drake maybe, and then you're gonna call your ex or something. Then it says have fans have harshly pushed back, saying that artists deserve artistic freedom. Honestly, like you don't have to be a fan to say that too. Like yeah, you know, you deserve artistic freedom. And then any observed violence is purely due to the realities of low socioeconomic status. That's kind of like, maybe that was the case in the past. There's people out there that are making the music that didn't live that life and don't have low socioeconomic status. Like if I was making rap like music, like based off what I listen to, I'd be talking about some shit. And clearly, if you see my background, I'm not living in that kind of life. Do you think artists deserve no blame at all? No, of course, like artists deserve some blame for the work that they put out. But like heavy restrictions, that's a lot. Isn't it reasonable to say that people are generally influenced by the media they absorbed? Yes, you are. Like we talked about that with like Fox News and certain like OAN and certain stuff, MSNBC. And it says, and if that's the case, shouldn't rap be heavily restricted? Fuck no, it's music. All right, what's next? Like we're just not gonna dance in this town anymore because like we're just not gonna listen to music anymore. Like, you know, that's the devil's lettuce. You know, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do this. Like it's music. That's like one of the, if aliens came to this country, or they just came to Earth right now, like that is one of the uniquely human things is music. That's like one of our greatest creations. To be like, let's heavily restrict it because of this. Like no, that's so stupid. On top of that, it's like popularity. People want to listen to this music. That's why it's selling. It's not the only music out there. I'm like, have you ever asked yourself, if so many white people are listening to rap music, how come you don't see so many like white rappers? There are white rappers. It's just the music that people want to listen to is black people saying that stuff and saying these specific things that people say is problematic. That's what sells. That's what you're hearing on the radio. That's it.
Okay. Thanks for that. Yes, no dancing in this town, all right? By the decree of Prime, there will be no more dancing. Also, side note, and I update the channel every so often with this. So when I change the stream title, right, like here on Twitch, I always, every so often I discover something interesting. Apparently, Twitch doesn't allow you to put the word misogynist in your stream title. how is that protecting anyone, right? Like, talking about misogyny, like, you cannot put it in this. It's so dumb. I'm sorry. Like, we run into these words like all the goddamn time, and I don't know, how does this help it? Whatever. All right, let's go to Karen.
Oh gosh, so it's one of those things. I personally am not for large censorship of music in general. Like, I think that what artists, whatever they say is what they say, whatever. But I do think that there are, I think that to the point about misogyny in rap, I think that there are definitely issues of normalization of misogyny within rap, right? Or within like cultures and things like that, right? So I think that there probably is a responsibility on the artists themselves about what messages they're sending. But at the same time, if there's those messages, I think a lot of artists are fine with the messages they're sending. You know what I mean? Like, if the messages are misogynist, I think that a lot of artists are like, yeah, okay, so like, I don't know if they're particularly losing sleep over like sending those messages. And I think they're probably fine with sending the messages. I don't know if they have any feeling about, those messages beyond that, honestly. But I do think there's kind of like a normalization of it too that occurs. My brother works in the music industry, actually, and he is the youngest of three of us. It's like, I'm the middle child, my sister's the oldest, and we got into it very publicly one time about his attitudes towards women. But I think it's just kind of normalized, it's just like this was kind of normalized, and I think that if people call them out on it, they can choose whether or not they want to respond to it. But I don't know if there's like any other kind of censorship or whatever that needs to occur more than that, right? I think people can have a conversation about the message that they're sending through their music. But I don't know if there's anything more that needs to happen beyond that. I mean, I would love it to be less misogyny, of course, right? But like, if the artist, like, that's my experience, that's how I feel. I mean, that's what music is, right? That they're conveying how they feel and what their experience is.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yes. I'm always against this argument of like restricting art in this way, even if it's violent or misogynist or whatever. I think you can criticize, you can be critical of, you can denounce, you can like say this, you can try to push back on the influence, but I don't think you should be restricting these things. And I don't like how rap music is always a thing to come up to be blamed for the influence of like misogyny and violence, when like, I don't know if people missed the whole 80s era of like hair metal, but like that was extremely misogynistic, right? And it was extremely popular, but for some reason that doesn't get pushed, like that blame doesn't get pushed on them for the influence they set up from that era, right? It's all, it comes back to rap music, right? And it's only like they pick a specific genre or genres of rap music, right, and push it on the entirety of the encompassing genre of rap or hip hop, right? And it's completely not fair. I can see if you want to criticize gangster rap music, right? If you want to criticize this this materialistic money focused like music, right? If you have criticisms of that, that's fine. But rap and hip hop encompass tons of other like subgenres and artists who do totally different things and like are outside of that spectrum, who even have their own opinions about that like continuously get this label pushed onto them, right? Just for being like a rapper. And I think that's not fair. If we don't like extrapolate those ideas from other like genres like metal, which I listen to. If you ever listen to grindcore, if you ever listen to any like type of death metal, right, you know it's extremely misogynistic, extremely violent, right? But people don't, like, that genre isn't like put out there like this is influencing all these people to do this thing. It's always rap music, which is, I think, is extremely racist and not fair.
Okay, let's go to Bam.
The surface level of this conversation is culture. Music doesn't affect culture. Culture affects music. So the people who make these types of songs, like maybe not every single person, but for the most part, like they're people talking about the experiences and of the lifestyle that comes around them, even if everything's not personally like didn't personally happen to them. It may have personally happened to a close friend. It may be an uncle, a relative, someone down the street. These things are the things that they see. These things are the things that are glorified in these places because they're seen as the only way of making it out of these situations. That's the surface level truth of it. Taking that one step further, is acknowledging that there are these behaviors and these experiences don't give you a voucher to be misogynistic, to be homophobic, to be, like all of these things. Like the things that Boosie has said recently are some of the most disgusting things I've ever heard from a person's mouth. And he's a killer. He's killed real people. Like, same thing with the baby. Same thing. Like, this doesn't make any of these situations okay, but we do have to acknowledge the environments that these people came from. The fact that a lot of people have experienced the prison industrial system and the ways that affects people, especially black people. And I do agree with Chris that rap music is, and hip hop culture in general, is like as broad as the ocean is wide, but we seem to isolate it on these certain types of music. I would never tell people that they can't make the type of art they want to make, but I do think that it's a good thing that we are praising, that we are having standards for ourselves. Yeah.
Let's go to Fanatiq.
Okay, so I think, music is obviously personal expression, but I think the idea of having artistic freedom does not mean that you need to be devoid of personal responsibility with your constituency and what you're doing with your platform. And so with that being said, I would say that rap music, while it does have sometimes misogynistic lyric, as any other genre does, I think that there is like this media attention on it. I think there are plenty of prolific artists who are out there promoting really positive messages. You had Tupac, who would sometimes do misogynistic stuff, but he would also do very uplifting things like Dear Mama, or telling stories about like problems within the ghetto, like Brenda's Got a Baby, right? Then you obviously have artists like Jay-Z, who are doing insane amounts of good with like the money that he's gotten from his platform and with his platform itself directed at Black people. Then of course you obviously have people like Kendrick Lamar, and his fantastic album To Pimp a Butterfly, which was clearly a really pivotal album at an important time during the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think having these sorts of albums that like generate attention on social issues is something that hip hop has done. We got to remember that those LA riots that happened back in the day, those were somewhat what was trending on the radio at the time was F the Police by NWA. So like, let's not try to detach hip hop from the Black culture that it largely influenced with plenty of positive benefits at different times, and try to make and try to frame it as only this thing that's being used to degrade and demonize women, because that's just not what that thing is.
Chaeiry, again?
Okay, sorry, I think you cut off. I didn't hear it.
Okay.
So I'm against censoring art, so that includes rap music. I don't find rap music to be more offensive than any other genre. A band I really like, Avenged Sevenfold, one of my favorite songs of theirs, A Little Piece of Heaven, is all about a dude who offs this girl in a video game and uses a heater to warm up her crotch so he can continue using her. That's disgusting, but it's a banger song and it has no effect on like my outlook in life. I think let people be artistic and creative, and if they do it in a tasteful way, they will be popular. And if not, there will be a record to show how gruesome and disgusting a few artists were in their time.
What the shit? What the fuck?
It's a banger of a song.
There's worse. It's a decent song. There's like, but there, like, it gets crazy, which is like nobody brings it up, right? And these like bands, Avenged Sevenfold is extremely popular. So like, this is baffled. Oh yeah, this isn't.
Yeah, we'll make it up. But like, I'm sorry, I just didn't expect that. Like, holy crap! All right, but thank you, Chaeiry.
The viewers.
Hope.
I think I just want to agree with everything that everybody has already said. Like, I don't believe in censoring art. It shows up how it shows up, but I also agree with Fanatiq that you can't, two things can be true at one time, right? Like, you still have to acknowledge the fact of the weight that you hold in social society based off of the shit that you say. It's part of the reason why when people give us that bullshit, like, I don't want to be a role model to your kids. Well, bitch, you are, regardless of whether you signed up for it or not. Like, that's what it is, right? And so when we talk about the ways in which rap shows up and the way that rap kind of sort of influences culture, I think that that's another two things can be true at one time. It does, art mimics real life, but I think that in a way, art does create, right, what the culture does become. And so when we see a space where a lot of Black men were like, nah, skinny jeans is gay, and then rap was like, nah, but you gonna do it, right? When we see a space where a lot of, Black men were like, I don't eat pussy, and I'm not gonna talk about it in everyday world, and then Lil Wayne started rapping about it, now everybody eating pussy, right? So there's a thing about the ways in which rap culture does help to influence the way that Black people, specifically with the scope on Black men, feel the need to carry out masculinity and manhood. And so there's like this double-edged sword. I don't want to censor you, but I also want to hold you accountable. And I think that we have to be mindful of the ways in which that art shows up, right? We can support it. We can say that we're not going to censor you, but also when it's time for you to show up to the judgment table, don't be looking stupid, right? Like that's the thing too. Like, don't be looking stupid when people are like, okay, this thing here though was a little bit too far. Like, I think all of us can agree when Chaeiry just said that, like, we don't want to censor the art, but at the same time, when we go, what the fuck? Like, don't be looking crazy when people go, what the fuck, at the art that you've created. And I think that that's the trade-off. If you want to create art, if you want to be able to say whatever you want to say, if you want to be able to put out things into the world, and do so just frivolously and do so from the pits of your heart, no matter what those words look like, sound like, or feel like, then you also have to be ready for the fact that some people are going to have thoughts and opinions about that art. And you should be able to stand behind it 10 toes down if that's what you really wanted to say with your full entire chest. So,
Okay. All right. We'll have to see it. Thank you so much for that. But like, you needed a celebrity to tell you how to love your woman? Do better, Black men. Do better. All right. Let's go to Jay.
I will start off by saying the first album that I bought was with my own money. Was a CD from Walmart. It was 50 cents, Get Rich or Die Trying, and it was the explicit version. So to hear this sad, terrible news that kids can't buy explicit versions of I mean, I guess kids don't buy CDs anymore, but still, it's terrible. That's terrible. To me, music is, I listen to music in everything I do. I listen when I'm cooking in the kitchen. I do it when I'm biking, when I'm cleaning up my room. I listen to the lyrics not with the intent of like, oh, let me go act on this thing. Like, let me go, this inspires me in this amount of way. I really listen, for the rhythm and the beats. I'm not always invested in the lyrics. So I feel like to blame, an artist for what they wrote down, if it's a banger beat, is kind of, I don't think they should have blame. If, other corporate or other like groups of people can be legally protected, why can't music? And I think actually, in the 80s, I want to say it was Schneider, not Dean Schneider. He was in a band. He was in like a hair band in the 80s, but he essentially had to testify in front of Congress as to why D. Snyder, that's his name. But he testified in front of Congress as to why like explicit versions of music, should be allowed. And I think that same argument applies here. You can't censor, you shouldn't censor music, and you can't censor music. It should not be restricted, no matter what the lyrics are. And was it Chris? I think, no, it was either Chris or Bam, the point about like 80s music, like 80s rock band. Yeah. I mean, you don't even have to go that far. Like Blurred Lines, fucking Taylor Swift made a misogynist song not that long ago. So you can't blame one subset of one genre of music for having negative attitudes towards the listeners. And I think, people have to take responsibility for their actions.
Open to the panel.
Yeah. there's tons of like insanely violent, crazy music out there. And it's just weird how like rap is still getting singled out because gangster rap isn't even that popular anymore, right? You like listen to a lot of stuff and maybe still misogynist, but like gang stuff is like you may have like what 21 Savage and a few other people like but like they're mostly making dance music, they're mostly making trap music that's like has good like it's good sound, right? There's not as many as there used to be of these like gang related, gang affiliated artists pushing these things, which they weren't really pushing those things anyway. They were describing the reality that they were living, right? And yet we still have like even though like metal and rock music isn't the top anymore, don't get it twisted. It's still worldwide very popular, right? And there's still people listening to these things, right? Still have a band like Cannibal Corpse going like 30 years strong, making the same violent, like misogynistic music as they've been making, right? I love the band, don't get me wrong. They've made some disgusting songs. Does that mean they need to be censored and restricted? No, they've been banned from countries, right? If you feel that way about the music, you should explain why this isn't something that you should internalize and like should like think like this is something you should enact. Explain like people should like involve some critical thinking when it comes to these things and realize like this is just art. Like if you were watching a horror movie, right, and there's some violent misogynistic things that happen in that movie, right, you wouldn't be going to like trying to restrict a bunch of horror movies or like horror movies in general because of the possibility of this being able to happen, right? So this like being pushed on music.
We do restrict movies.
We have rating systems, right? We don't restrict them from being distributed and like to being made, or like what do you mean by restricted? Because like everything already, like music has rating systems, like video games, movies. So those things we have rating systems.
Radio has restrictions.
Yeah. No, who listens to the radio anymore?
No, but
Bro,
like,
listen to car people out there. Like they're all looking at you a little bit more sus.
Car people still use like streaming services too. Yeah. Like you
All
have like
All right.
especially when you can cater it like your like music experience to the things you exactly what you want to listen to. You can have some podcasts in between your playlists, right? You don't have to be restricted to like these local radio stations that only play things that are popular, right, in worldwide sense, and only have that be your exposure to the music.
Maybe it's because
wouldn't you make the argument that part of the reason people would use a streaming service over like radio is because the radio is censoring the music and they can get the music they want when they want it, how they want it from streaming services?
Not necessarily censoring, but curating. They're curating an experience that you're not.
But they're also censoring it. You can't.
Oh yeah, they do make.
That's part of the curation process that they do.
Yeah, they do like edit out songs. They do like make clean versions of them.
Yeah,
or, like,
try to listen to like Young Money and try to listen to like I don't know anything Tyga says back in like the early like the 2010s or whatever. Like the whole song is censored. It's like censored up the asshole. Like I don't know, compared to like if you're getting to listen to it straight off Spotify or like Apple Music, what have you.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That's why I stopped listening to music like 20 years ago.
Whoa, that's crazy.
I mean, not music.
Okay, I was like, damn, bro, you probably about that like No Nut November shit too. Like
the music. I think music is like a pretty big influence, and it does influence the way people think a lot. Like I think so anyway. I don't know. I guess I'd probably need to look for any forms of studies or something. But I do think that like art and media do have like the effect of sort of normalizing specific attitudes and ideas. So then it's like if we're going to be having like insane, irresponsible music, it doesn't matter how great the melody is. Like it just seems like that would be kind of sinister to attach like a great melody such that it would be attractive to younger audiences and then having some really heinous themes inside of it. It sounds really, really problematic. Don't you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think I was about to say Kevin Gates got people talking about eating booty like publicly. Like he was absolutely.
Don't take that away. Don't take that away from
that.
Don't take that away from Jhené Aiko or Aiko. I never pronounce her name right.
Yeah, Jhené Aiko definitely did.
He's the one that was saying "eat the booty like groceries" well before Kevin Gates even.
No, I'm pretty sure Kevin Gates was definitely before that song.
Yeah,
he
said it before, and
yeah.
She popularized it because of the way that she delivered it in that song, but he was definitely saying it before that.
Kevin Gates an OG then, damn.
Yeah, do you think there's?
I always.
Well, I'm gonna Bam. do you think, to Chaeiry's point there, do you think it's specifically an issue that people were doing that, right? Or like that
eating the booty?
sex act? Yeah.
Oh no, I mean I'm pro eat the booty, but
okay,
Oh, you didn't
but
sound
I
like
would.
it.
But no, I'm just saying that I know even for myself personally, I wouldn't have vocally said, which I was young then. I'm pretty sure I was a virgin at the point. But I know when it came out and people were talking about it, I was weak. I went with the crowd at first. I was like, oh man, he said that. That's crazy. But in my head, I was like, maybe I do that. I don't know. But once it became more popular, I was like, oh, okay. Like I was a sheep when it came to that specific issue. But I think that's good that music like helped open up that topic. He took the hit for it, but like it did like normalize it.
Be honest with yourself. Would you let your booty be eaten though? Because that's really what it's about. That's really what it's about. It's not fun to do, but
it's not fun to do.
No, it's fun to do. Fuck that.
Damn. Y'all wild.
We've
I
already
like to
covered
get
this
it done.
issue.
We got too many.
It's reciprocal.
Let's not ruin. We finally got 4 women. Let's not ruin this.
Okay,
in
fair enough.
10 minutes.
Fair enough. It's true. Chaeiry, you want to say something? Then back to Chris.
I just wanted to say, like music and a good beat or whatever, what Fanatiq was talking about, and then feeling like it's ruined by like a vulgar song or something, or a song with like hate. I think like music just shows you what like that time, what that era was like, and what was acceptable if it became popular. And for that, I wouldn't want to censor it or like restrict it. I think that it's interesting going through rap music to see what it was like back then and see where it's progressed now, and like what it will be in the future. I wouldn't want to erase any of that.
But some music is actually counterculture and it's not necessarily popular, right? Like, so if you look at like NWA's F the Police, that wasn't like the pervasive idea for the average teenager at the time. And maybe there might have been a bunch of black people with that sentiment specifically.
But it shows you a shift, right? Like we can also see the change that happened after that. Like that song was groundbreaking, and then you got to see people's reaction to it and where that like moved the vibe or whatever.
Sure, I would say that music functions some like an amplifier, right? Because you had the Rodney King situation, and I can't even remember this young woman's name who was shot by that Korean shop owner. Like those two things. What's that?
I think it was Lanisha, but I forget her last name. There was a documentary on her that I watched it that was really good.
Yeah,
I'll link it in the chat.
Please do. Those things in combination with that song trending, I do think that like music can have that effect of somewhat amplifying. And you're right. I think it sometimes can shift attitudes. Like they're talking about Kevin Gates talking about nasty things like eating the booty. But like, so ultimately, I just think that music, I had to throw that word in there because I'm just not that. I'm not about that life. But I think the idea is that you absolutely can attach what I would say are somewhat sinister ideas towards like music. Like you have all these people that were like releasing all this racist folk music like during the Jim Crow era, right? And some of those people were doing those kind of things, and just because the songs were popular, and sometimes also songs can have somewhat subliminal meanings that are not necessarily popular that become incredibly like successful, like not the idea of the song but just what the song is about. But people didn't know what the freak Hotel California was about, but the song was a banger, right? Most people had no idea what the freak those lyrics were about. It's not until years later, and then like maybe sometimes some artistic exposition from like the actual artist, that like we finally start getting an idea of, oh, this song was really a representation of this. You can look at like Michael Jackson songs like They Don't Care About Us. We didn't know what the freak he was talking about at that time per se, or what his Dangerous album cover meant, right? A lot of times these things are steeped in like symbolism and imagery and things like that that aren't readily apparent, but the songs themselves can be catchy, right? And I don't think it's necessarily representation of like the youth, but I do agree that it can be at times, especially if something is like pervasive and not just in a singular example of it, but like on its face music and being imitated and so on and so forth. And at that point, then you start saying, yeah, this seems like this was just kind of a sign of that time.
I think it's interesting that this is the first time we're in an interesting time where people do rap to be popular, when rap has always existed as the counter narrative. It was young people's way of expressing themselves. Like what we're saying is not popular, but we're gonna say it anyways, and we don't, F how you feel. Like,
well, yeah,
I mean,
white people did that to us. The 1996 Telecommunications Act basically got rid of all of like the independent hip hop labels, all of the independent radio stations. So we're now like only a handful of people are controlling the music. So if you want your music to be successful, it has to be approved by those few people in power. So then that music can then be distributed on the radio because they control it all. Telecommunications Act of 1996. Look that up.
Yeah, I just think that's like interesting in the time we are now.
Isn't it easier to be an independent artist nowadays?
Nowadays, there was a big because of these platforms now. Before, like for a big chunk of time, 25 years or so. Yeah, Fanatic's completely right. These big record labels, they control what was heard on the radio, what you saw on MTV, like all these platforms. Like there was completely restrictive, and they only chose certain voices to like amp up.
It depends on what you mean by easy, though, right? Because yes, anyone can be an artist nowadays, but how do you get your voice heard? Like, yeah, I have amazing albums on Spotify and every other platform in existence under the artist name Fanatiq, which you can get for literally free on any of these streaming platforms, such as an album named Soundscapes. It's there. You can check it out. It's instrumental music, so you don't have to worry about any sort of subliminal nonsense happening or influencing people unfairly. But yeah, that kind of music is there. How do you get that music to be heard? Well, I guess you could do a little plug like I just did right now, and then the people actually watching the stream can then click it, and then that's how that music gets heard. But aside from that, as an independent artist, I don't know how you actually make money. Like streaming itself isn't particularly lucrative and things like that. I make money through doing music gigs, like instead of having steady gigs and things like that. But as far as like getting your music on the radio, that's significantly harder than it's pretty much ever been, right? Like that's trying to get record deals and things like that is also particularly hard.
But I think a lot of folks are moving away from the traditional, like, I want to be signed, I want to get a record deal, I want to do, the Columbia tour, right? Like, a lot of people are becoming successful by this whole idea of what it means to hop onto TikTok and do a 30-second cover and then tell people that you actually sing your own shit, right? Like, Jay Nova is extremely successful. She might not be like Beyonce, but like a lot of folks know her music. People still go to the tour. What a lot of people don't know, but if you are like an actual fan of SZA, was that SZA was famous before SZA was SZA, right? Like she was actually doing things before The Weeknd, ever happened upon her life. I think that when we talk about what it means to be an artist these days and what it means to like stream and what it means to actually get your voice out there, it's really about selling the image that people want to buy into. It's about figuring out who people want to be, becoming that person, and then selling it back to folk. And so that's why we have this aesthetic now where there are so many of these like new young boy rappers that come in and they may have some like actual shit to say, but they know that like the popular thing to do is to figure out how to be the next mumble rapper that sounds like they're saying something that the other next mumble rapper is not saying, right? What does it look like to sag my pants in a different way? Like that's why we have like all of these new guys trying to act like, oh, they invented colored nail polish when we've seen this on like boy bands since like the 80s, right? But now all of these black guys are adopting it and saying, look, I can do this and not be gay. We've known this for forever. You're just figuring this out, right? So it's like this idea that when we're talking about the ways in which rap culture affects the way that people see things, I think to bring it back into the conversation that we're having, it's about being able to create this person, create this narrative, create this messaging that people resonate with and that sounds good for them, but also being that person that somebody wants to be and somebody that's like actually attainable. Before, and I hate to reference him, but I always use this reference whenever I talk about topics in this nature. There was a Breakfast Club conversation, and I think it was like a Nicki Minaj thing, or maybe they referenced. I'm not talking about Charlemagne the Queen. But anyway, so basically it was one of those things where I believe Envy him and Yee were talking about celebrities, and Charlemagne said, I don't want my celebrities to be regular, right? Like, and that was probably like 6-7 years ago, where we had the Lady Gagas when Nicki Minaj was wearing wigs that were, cheetah printed, and when we had people wearing things that were crazy that you would never wear if you weren't famous. And now it's not about being unattainable. It's not about that spectacle of being famous anymore. It's literally about being down to earth. It's about going live 50 times a day with your fans. It's about looking like every other person so that people can go into the store and buy the same thing that you have on so that they can feel like they can have that lifestyle, even if they know that they'll never live the life that you're living. And that is where rap comes in, because I think that it's a lot easier to do this with rappers and to do it with male rap specifically, because it's so much easier to attain these things for men than it is for women. Men already a lot of, we're gonna say a lot, right? Majority of like the black male youth, right? They're already buying Jordans. They already want the Gucci. They already want the whatever. And so those things are easily attainable. And it's not the same as like with women, because we're always trying to find the next couture piece. There's always somebody that wants to put us in some shit that you got to be personally strapped into, or whatever the case may be. But with rap, and when you're talking about guys, everybody can go and get that Gucci headband that they made fun of Soulja Boy for wearing for 7 years, right? Like everybody
But they
can
won't
go.
stretch it out like he did.
right.
He
But
really
like
they
did.
could
He
never.
really stretched that shit out.
everybody can get those things, and I think that that's what makes this rap thing influential. And I see where Fanatic is going, where it's just like you have to kind of sort of be mindful of the ways in which like the messaging kind of comes across in this like obtuse way, because there's a bunch of things that are being said without being said, and like what actually is the music saying, but also like what are the images saying, like what are we really saying to people without saying it to them, that leads us to believe X, Y, and Z about this particular topic based off of what some rapper said.
There's also like, once again, there's like a learning curve that is so non-existent if you listen to rap for quite some time. That is funny that it exists. Is that there's like, it's hard to understand some rappers, and I don't experience that because like I just listen to hip hop a lot, and I realized that when I was in college and I'd listen to music with some people, and it's like they didn't actually listen to any of the lyrics. They just liked the beat and stuff. They didn't understand what the songs are about, and I was like, huh? Because like me, and even like I'm from Long Island. There's a lot of white people that listen to hip hop, so like the people I grew up with, like they all knew what the lyrics were and stuff. So I was like, people do that, like they. And then I experienced that with my roommate on a song. It was crazy. It was like an amazing week. Like you got Drowning and Tunnel Vision dropped like in the same day or some shit. It was that week, and we were like, oh shit, yo Boogie, hey Boogie, yo, oh my god, Kodak's going crazy on this shit. And I remember listening to Drowning, and my roommate was there, and then he just didn't listen to rap like that, and he was like trying to like analyze the song, and he was like, oh dude, after like the 6th listen through, he was like, yo, I think what it's about is him saying this, and he thought like he was discovering like some like hidden messaging in the song. I'm like, nah, that's just the lyrics. Like it's not that deep. Like A Boogie's not the deepest dude out there, you know? And I just found that funny because it relates to what you guys are talking about. So there's people that just listen to rap just for the beat, like just for the vibe.
Well, that's the age we're in now. Yeah. Like we're in the age of the producer. Like rappers are cool. Rappers are a byproduct, but like what decides if people likes a song is the first 5 seconds when you hear murder on the beat. So it's
that's
not
why
nice.
Drake is so popular.
It's the age of the producer. Like if your Metro don't trust you, I'm gonna shoot you.
Metro
Like
booming.
Producers make music now. Like you can rap whatever you want, but if you don't have the right producer, people not rocking with it. But the right producer can put anybody on.
I don't know if that's new though, because if we look back in the day, you had Timbaland, and he was putting on how many different artists. Anytime he was on, hold on, but it didn't stop at Timbaland. Dr. Dre was doing it for the West Coast. And you had all these people that were like literally just in his camp, and all them people were hitting, right? And then DJ Quick was doing the same thing for his camp. I feel like for Swizz Beatz, clearly, like I feel like it's always been like the producers are normally like a humongous portion of what's happening. Like a lot of people don't like P. Diddy, but you have to recognize as a producer, bro, like he did what the freak he did. Like that he had so much influence over that music industry, which is like, you know,
Kanye before he lost it.
Kanye West
never lost
like,
it as a producer.
No,
I
lost.
swear, as a producer, I'm not like first and foremost as a producer. Come on.
Tell me why his new album sounds like it was amateur made out of like the garage.
But you love the beats though, don't you? You love the beats though.
The sound quality is
reading a book to Moon, going like, this shit's a vibe.
Listen, I don't disagree with you at all. There's plenty of these tracks that literally don't have any production value besides a single line.
Literally talking about Mr. West.
Like when it comes to the restriction part of the topic, I can see if there's certain platforms you don't want certain types of art to be on, right? You don't want like Nickelodeon to be airing like Hellraiser, right? That makes no sense. Like that's
really
like
pretty badass. I don't know.
It would
give those kids an education.
But like, it doesn't make sense to me to say, all right, rap music in general, all right, this all needs to be restricted as a whole. right? If you don't want some gangster rapper coming into your like your teen music fest or whatever you're doing, right? That's right. Just don't like hire them for the job, right? They have other places they can be, and like they can go for any one of these artists, right? Hire who you think fits your platform and do it that way. But to say like, all right, there's something specific about this genre in its entirety that needs to be restricted as a whole, right? More than any of the other genres, right? That just feels weird to me.
Okay. I actually want to. So, I don't want people to get caught up on this censoring thing. You guys went full bore on that one. That's not really where I want to go with this. Do you think rap is a good representation of the community? Right? Like,
no, absolutely not. So, rap used to be a representation of the community. There was a point in time when culture and community were influencing hip hop. That used to be a thing. Now we have hip hop influencing culture and community, where you have this like absolute fantasy being portrayed by a bunch of artists that aren't living that lifestyle, that have never been part of that lifestyle, and then they like literally start pushing out this imagery and these ideas, and then the community goes to imitate what they're seeing there. But it's not a direct reflection of what poverty or not just poverty, what culture people were experiencing. A lot of our culture has been influenced by poverty, from our dietary choices to the fact that we wore baggy pants, to so many different elements, right? But then now it's like, nope, all we're talking about is cars, money, and hoes, and the vast majority of people can't afford these cars, whatever. It seems like that tends to be really pervasive inside of whatever for mainstream hip hop at this point. Not all hip hop, obviously, local artists typically are going to be a reflection of their community, and then those kind of people, like their music isn't like all over the rest of the country. It's just like within their whatever, distributed in that way. But in reality, what's mainstream nowadays tends to be that.
I'm so glad you said. I'm so glad you said. Like that, I thought you were gonna say the vast majority of people can't afford these hoes. I thought that's I'm sorry.
They can't.
I'm glad you didn't say that.
They can't. If we're being honest.
I'm saying like
Can
like
they though?
that's what makes it fun though. Like if you
$20.
like ever like freestyled and you got like you sit around with a group of dudes and they're playing like a beat, you're not gonna go on there and be like, I want to uplift our people and get everybody feed the kids on the street. No, you're gonna go in there and be like, yeah, 2 shots in your head, click clack and you dead. It's just fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Like I don't like, I'm not a Barb. I don't love Nicki because I relate to her. I'm never dropping a bag on a pair of fucking earrings, but I do like listening to her and just getting in that like on my high shit vibe. I don't know. I don't need to relate.
Like, can't
to her or
relate.
anything.
I seen it. She was like, she was like, we are not the same. But that's okay. She respects you.
And like I don't know,
like,
to say that it's like a representative of the culture, like that's a weird. Like why do they have to? Why are they barred that way? Like it's like Chris was saying, like the music that came before, none of them were like put in this category where you have to describe, and you stand for everything in the country in this category. Like you stand for all punks, or you stand for like all people in like the Appalachia or something, where it's like when like now like hip hop artists have to be like, you stand for all black people, and it's like there's still people that carry that torch, that feel that way. Like when they make music, they feel like this strain. Like J. Cole will be like, talk about it. He'll be like, he had the song Let Nas Down, where he's like talking about, I just made one song that was like a radio hit, and my favorite artist thinks differently of me and stuff. Whereas like there's so many artists that like feel that burden, but they don't have to. Like sometimes, most of the time, like I'll be listening to like Lil Uzi Vert just to feel good, like just to feel a vibe. Like I'm not listening to that music being like, I want to learn about like motherfuckers from, where is he from, like Philadelphia or some shit, Pennsylvania. Like I just want to know, like I know what I want to hear, and I just want to hear a vibe. And there's other times I want to hear deeper music. Like you're talking about, like I think earlier, Hotel California, great song. But that shit long as fuck. Like I'm not gonna listen to it all the time. I'm only gonna listen to it when I just want to listen to something with lyrics for a long time that's deep, has a nice vibe, and it brings you to space mentally.
Go ahead, Hope.
Yeah.
So I beg to differ, right? And I beg to differ because the comments, the likes, the clicks, and all of that stuff tell me opposite. I think that a lot of the music is a reflection of the community. I think that what happens a lot of the times is that people who don't live that life and people who don't like or respect those lifestyles are just like, no, that ain't me. Like that's not a reflection because that ain't what but like I think in a majority, a lot of people are living this life. Like we have to realize that even though there's still generational, curses and miswealth and all of this stuff that we're dealing with, there are a lot more Black people that are out here balling, whether it be by hook or crook, right, than there used to be. There are a lot more Black men that are out here buying these cars and living these lavish lifestyles. And we see these things, whether they be from fraud or actually getting in and getting this money. Like, this is not a thing anymore. There are a lot more Black women that are living like Nicki Minaj than we care to relate. Like, when we talk about it was like, it's a funny thing when Bam is like, Hope can't relate because I can't. I would drop, and I have dropped a bag on some shoes or some, whatever, because that's what I like, and I make the money to be able to do that. I work my ass off to do those things. And so when I listen to Nicki, it's not just me getting a vibe. It's me being like, yep, I just came from Louis Vuitton this morning and I like this motherfucking bag. And so there are things where we have to be honest that sometimes this music is indicative of the culture. And honestly, a lot of the time it's a pusher. Like, I know that for me, when I was listening to some of this music, it wasn't the secular stuff that was getting me. It was the stuff about being a boss ass woman and being able to purchase and buy all of these things that made me feel good about the work that I was fucking doing. Because there was a point in time where I was making money and I was so busy, I'm gonna save, I'm gonna put away because I don't want to look like, and I don't want to and I don't want to feel like blah, 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 blah. But it's like, when I die, I can't take none of this shit with me. And I'm over here walking past these stores like I ain't got it. And bitch, I do. I deserve this nice thing. I deserve that nice thing. And as long as my bills are paid, who gonna check me? And so, yes, I'm gonna swipe this card and all of those things are true. And I think that when we look at the ways in which a lot of these young Black men are talking, while it may not be the lifestyle of the majority of people, a lot of these young boys are going and balling out in the strip club every weekend. We know them, we see them, we judge them, some of us, right? A lot of these young boys are out here renting these cars and paying for these lifestyles and going on these trips, and Black people are legitimately living their best lives. And what I've seen is that this music is, while a lot of the themes, right, clearly as a Black trans woman, I have some issues with some of the shit that is being said. I think that a lot of this music is pushing a lot of young Black people to get up and get it by any means necessary. And while some of the shit is illegal, and we got to talk about that on a different, conversation, I think that some of it is really fucking positive because it's making people get up, get out, and get something because people want to be able to show off the shit that they're getting. And so I don't think that it's fair to say that it's not a depiction of the culture in any way, because we all see it right now. Whether or not we indulge in it ourselves is different. But I do think that it is indicative of a culture that is continuously emerging. Like, the kids are out here making money.
You guys want to see me?
I love
you
that.
guys want to see me balling out? Hit that subscribe button right now. I will do that for you. I will live this lifestyle.
Yeah, but you can't define a culture by its outliers, right? And so when I'm talking about the culture, because forever there have always been successful Black people. There were actually successful Black people that owned slaves during the slave days. That wasn't the average Black experience in this country, nor was it what we could describe that as the Black culture, right? I get the Black, we're not a monolith, and we all do have different lifestyles, and there are plenty of people who are out here living these lifestyles, but there is plenty of evidence to suggest that a lot of these artists were making this music talking about the money and the drugs that they were taking and the things that they had, and the lifestyle that they had long before they actually had it. So many people fake it until they make it, and then securing a deal ends up allowing you to actively live the lifestyle that you're doing so on your debt. But in reality, they weren't living that life before they got those deals, and that's still not the typical culture.
I think you just have to remember where you have to remember where the average, where these rappers come from, and it's really if you listen to majority of rappers, whether by birth or by just where they happen to have these experiences at, it's from really 4 places. Atlanta, which there are a lot of financially successful Black people in Atlanta.
Miami, the average, and most of these rappers who are coming up in these situations again are not from those success circles that are being.
Let him say New York first. Let him add New York then.
I don't. Well, first of all, I feel like New York music is dead right now. Like, I don't think y'all
Wow.
doing it
Wow,
right
you-
now. I was about to say,
wow.
but I was gonna say the Bay
You
Area.
gonna say that to
Hey.
Griselda? You gonna say that to
An
Don
up-and-comer,
Q?
but
You
someone
gonna
had
say
to go
that?
kill Pop Smoke.
and somewhat Miami. Those are like the three hotbeds. I was about to say you have a couple rappers from Memphis, but
You're really not counting New York like that. This is blasphemy.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I was
That's
about to say
all
y'all
right.
got to come harder. But like whenever you look at the people in these places, no, it's not the average person situation. But if you look at the people who are making these musics, who are like, if you do go to these strip clubs, you do see people that will drop 10 bands like it's nothing, and you've never seen this man in your life. You like, this man doesn't have, like, he probably not doing something legal to get this money. That's a high possibility, but these are people's realities. And
Here's-
But
Here's
that has
another
nothing to do
thing,
with.
though.
I'm talking about the
Being-
average. Just saying that something happens. Of course, we know these things happen. I'm saying.
But I'm saying
this
that
is the average
their
enough-
experience of the rappers, that's the average. That's the people who are doing these things. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
The
but
rappers
some of
aren't
it is
average
not
people.
just-
influence. Some of
Oh,
it
my
is
Lord.
influence. Rappers set up to be influencers, right? They go to a strip club. The owners give them the stacks, and they are made to just like throw it out and just like set an example.
You ain't doing that in Atlanta. They would laugh in your face. I done cut off Chris 3 times though. I know you.
No
gotta
one
say
would
something.
know except for
I wanted to what Fanatic said is true, right? There's a lot of rappers, especially when these 360 deals were like really popular, right? Their labels would give them money, right? And they would be set to like portray this like image, this lifestyle, right? There's like rappers and artists who that really like they really live that life, right? They've like they live this lifestyle every day. But there's like a lot of rappers that come, especially in the Miami area, like when that started to pop off, they give these people this money to get chains, to get cars, right? To get like get an entourage, right? They want to portray them to have this this big image so they can fit in with these other artists, right? And a lot of these people will like spend all that money, not get popular, right? And then they end up having to pay all that stuff back, get trapped in these 360 deals. This isn't just because there's people who live in that lifestyle. That's fine. I don't think they are invalid. But there is a portion of these, like especially if you're talking about record labels, that are pushing artists to portray that, right? They are, even if that like the artist that they're signing didn't start out that way, they want them to portray that image because they think it's profitable, and that's something they want to push. That's why I always say it's better. Like I'd say, like I would recommend everybody to go independent, do it that way, especially if you already have an audience and like a community built in, right? Loyal customers are the best customers. They'll keep coming back to you, right? Dealing with this fickle music industry is just not the way to go, because you can get dropped out of nowhere.
And the turnover is ridiculous.
I don't.
Like,
People talk about
wildly
360
ridiculous.
deals. If someone's willing to give you, if someone, like, let's say you are one of the poor people, if someone's willing to give you $3 million cash right now with no guarantees that you'll ever make another hot song, they're willing to take that risk, that level of investment in you. I do not blame Black people for taking that money. I get that there's like, whenever we see the people who do end up being super successful and making $20 million off of their name, like we say like, oh man, they got the bad end of that deal. But for the rappers who don't end up working out, but they got 5 million, got fronted 5 million by the record company, like, I'm not mad at them. I'm like, you know what, you took, like, you may not have ever seen that level of money again.
That money is going to paying for your music video. That money is going to paying your manager, paying for your fees, your house, like that. You're not really keeping. And $5 million, frankly, is not a lot of money today.
I'm about to say, I know you do get fronted.
It's not a lot.
No, $5 million is enough to retire if you want to live.
$5 million's a shitload of money. That's like
middle class America. You wouldn't have to work for the rest of your life.
Well, you could possibly, but the problem is that money is not all your money. You're not getting $5 million. What you're getting is you're going to be taxed on that $5 million, and then now you're going to owe that money, and then you're going to actually need to use that money to fund your entourage. And if you're actually trying to make that music happen, then there's going to be a lot of money paid into that endeavor, and so then that's money that you're not getting back. And if that money happens to be unsuccessful, that means that you're on debt. You're taking basically a $5 million loan when they give you that money. You owe $5 million. You're already taxed. So now, if say you're taxed at freaking 40%, then that means now that's an additional $2 million that you're going to owe now. So now you owe $2 million, or you owe $2 million in taxes. So now you're really in debt for $7 million. Think about that for a second. Like it's not like
It
it's
can
not
be.
like this
It
is
can
a
be
win.
No, I heard about this
predatory,
from
and
Lil.
it's definitely a problem. It can be predatory and it's definitely a problem. But I feel like where I think someone else is making the point, it's understandable for some people to grab that deal. I think there's a lot of people who are getting into rap who aren't even talented. They don't even write their own shit. Okay, if you can get a fucking like production company or like studio that fucking wants to sign you, give you $5 million just because you're a hot girl and you're not gonna have to write your own shit, like whatever, take it. I don't think you're making it on your own.
That's what I know. The reason I
For
heard about
sure,
this
and if
from
you're
was
in
Lil
debt for
Yachty
now,
talking about it.
yeah, but if you're in debt for $7 million for the rest of your life, and then yeah, you're really really stuck, and then now you're literally put in jail because you can't pay your taxes on this money because it actually didn't
Your
work out
dream
for you. Then I
career
guess it's
was
kind of
being a
rough.
rapper without having like the ability to write your own raps, right? You're making bad decisions before you even sign this fucking deal.
Right. So then at that point, why would it be a good idea to actually sign the deal? They didn't go to prison now.
Because if the company go like
Yeah.
this was the reason I heard about it specifically was Lil Yachty talking about this because people was talking about him signing a 360 deal and he was explaining like he was
also
like, bro,
writes his own.
he's like I was a college dropout with I was a college dropout from Alabama State from being bullied with sleeping on people's
He
couches.
deserved to be,
And-
deserved to be bullied.
But I'm saying like, and he was like, and I don't forget who he signed with. He said, but they came up to me and he put $5 million in front of my face and told me that and put $5 million in my face and people want me to bet on myself. He was like, what other opportunity would I ever have in my life to see this level of money? He ended up paying back his deal. It worked out for him. But he was saying if the company, that was a risk that he was willing to take. And he was saying if the company happens to go under, because just because you sign this deal, the company still understands that they are taking a risk on their end. If you fail as a rapper, the company, like if you don't have the money, the company can only go so far. Eventually you file bankruptcy and you may have your wages siphoned off for a while, but if they can't get that money, if there's no money to have, then that doesn't work out. If you don't sell, then you just don't sell.
That risk that he took, because I went to school with him and I remember we laughed him off the stage. He was horrible. And so that risk that he took was really interesting because he performed on several different occasions, and every single one of those occasions he bombed. When he took that risk, I think he took that risk because I completely agree with everything that you're saying, Bam. When it's one of those things where it's like, when is the next time that I'm going to see something like this? The idea of going to prison, and I think like let's be very clear here. I think there are very few people that are going to prison behind a lot of this, especially when the government looks into how it happened, because they would rather milk you on the outside than put you inside where you're free to just not do nothing, right? And so when we're talking about taking that risk on yourself, just like Chaeiry said, it's one of those things where if my whole dream, my entire life was to do this one thing, and somebody presents me with this opportunity, and I know that I have a shot, even if it's like a shot in hell, to do this and live this dream, even if it means that I might have to go back to being broke, then what do I lose, right? I get a couple of months, maybe a year or so of living out this fucking dream. I can stash away a little bit of this money somewhere where nobody can actually get to it. And that way, when I have to come back to this shit, I'll be okay for a little bit. Why not? Why not take the opportunity and why not take the chance? Because you just might be a Vanilla Ice out this bitch and not have to work another day in your life off of one fucking song. But if you never try, then you just don't know. And now you asked out looking like, what if? What if?
That's true, but I think if you're passionate about this, is something you want to do for the rest of your life. I think there's other opportunities and other ways to make money, live comfortably, and fight. You don't have to take that big a risk. You don't have to put yourself in slave contracts, right? You don't want to be touring terrible music for the rest of your life to pay back some money that you owe to this terrible record label, right? I think you should find other opportunities. I have a specific example, my favorite band, Periphery. They got offered tons of 360 deals, right? Everybody wanted to own their music. Everybody wanted to own their masters. They're touring everything, have control of that. What they do, they waited it out. They're no, we're not taking any of these deals, right? We're just gonna wait. And they found a small indie label. They were yeah, you can keep your masters. Yeah, you can keep your merch, right? Whatever, right? We'll just make the money off of the record sales you make, and mostly the record sales and a portion of some of this other stuff. And they did that. They were they came hugely successful, right? And when it came time to where they thought the label wasn't doing enough for them, what did they do? They left the label. They were to take their masters with them keep all the profits of what they were making, right? That label has no control of what they're doing, and now they're able to make their own record label, do their own things, and promote the artists the same way. I think if enough people aren't in the rap community aren't taking that chance to build these things, right? To build these their own platforms for like more healthy, sustainable living, right? Because they want to live that incredibly lavish lifestyle rather than like being able to live a comfortable lifestyle and make the music you enjoy making. If you can do that and then get continuously successful to where you can build up to living a lavish lifestyle, I think that's more healthy than the taking the chance to taking this huge risk with these people you can't really trust and building up an entourage of fake friends and just enemies around you that are going to take advantage of you every step of the way.
I mean, the success stories sound good. Like whenever we hear about it working out of someone who made it with that masters, that sounds great. But there's like 100 other, 10,000 other people
I was gonna say, like,
who fell from that same situation.
There's tons of other artists that have their own masters, like that, like especially older artists who they have their own masters. They're still making money, and like they can give the songs to these production companies or these promotional companies to use for commercials and things like that, right? These other big labels don't have control of them. They can still make money, not have to do more in their life because the records are still selling. And they get 100% of these profits, right? They can do other things like they can build their own labels. They can start independent things. You know what I mean? Like this is like these things are happening, and there's just nobody talks about it. Immortal Technique, completely independent, right? He's not as huge as these other rappers out there, but he's a millionaire. Right, look at it twisted. Right, so he makes a lot of money. He is able to work however he wants. Right, he's able to do whatever music he wants to do. He's not restricted to any label pressure or anything like that. And there's a tons of artists around him that are doing the same thing. And there's like tons of artists in New York, Atlanta, like in other places that are just like they're doing this. We just like they're not on a personal level of like Drake or like a Lil Nas X. Right, but not everybody has to be. There's such a big pie, right? Everybody can get a piece of it, but everybody wants to be like this god level like superstar that like is making all the money and has all the influence, right? I don't think that's necessary if you want to be able to live successful and have a great life in this like industry that you love. No.
But is it about the godlike complex, or is it about my thing is, if I truly care about something, right, we can talk about like, oh, I just do this because I love it, right? But at some point we want people to be able to experience that thing that we love, right? Like you can love something as much as you want to, but at some point there comes a time where you sit back and you're like, damn, like I wish more people had access to this. I wish that more people were seeing this. I don't think that it's always about the lavish lifestyle. I don't think that it's always about the chains and the bitches and the hoes and the jets. Sometimes it's about wanting to be able to have that reach that other people have. I could be making $1 million off of my music, but if I'm truly passionate about it, I want people to write think pieces about my shit. I want Vice to do, this really dope coverage about it.
They're still
but
doing
I feel
that.
like, some people are, but I think you can like basically trace that to like the actual content of the artists, right? And I think this like brings it back to somewhat to the original conversation. Like, yes, a person who's actually writing their own lyrics is going to be a little bit more passionate about it, and a person who's writing lyrics that actually have to do with like, I guess, true expression and like some sort of goal attached to it tend to be a little bit more it's going to resonate more with them when more people are hearing their message. But if your whole purpose of your song is just to have a little hot beat, the thing that's going to resonate the most is just that your song is on the radio and you're getting paid, right? Like it depends on what you're getting out of it.
Even the rappers that like don't do anything like deep or meaningful, I still think that's a niche, and I think it's hard to fill that vote and to be popular doing so. People can write off like the mumble rappers or the ones who aren't deep, but everyone can't be like Ski Mask. Everyone can't be Ugly God. They are successful and they are like entertaining to listen to because they're good at it.
Yeah, I don't mind anybody. Like music is broad. We all have moods. Like even everyone in here who loves like really deep music, like Wiggle was pointing to, you don't always want to listen to that. Sometimes like there is value to saying like, you know what, I'm just chilling right now. I want to see Drake dance on music video like that and
Young Thug.
Young Thug or whoever else. Like sometimes I just want to vibe for a minute, and that can and that like that resonates.
I want to say
me.
some Italian names for shit I can't afford. Dead ass.
Yeah, and honestly, the other thing with taking money is like it's a big, and it can be a big factor on your success. Like you can make great music as with the indie deal, and like other like when it comes to getting gigs and stuff like that, they might not respect the fact that you pull up in a Toyota Corolla. They might not like it. It may mean something to have the image of I am successful, I do have the money. Like other artists respect me, like I'm getting paid, and that makes other people feel like they have to respect you because you come with this sort of this image of I'm someone to be respected versus someone who pulls up. And there's nothing wrong with like wearing, like pulls up in a Walmart fit because that's what they're comfortable in. But if you don't have a name behind you, if you don't have a backing behind you, like a lot of times you don't get opportunities that way.
I fuck with that because she may not be a rapper, but one of the things that Lady Gaga said very early on was that she got famous by pretending to be famous, right? Like she used to literally, her and her theater friends would get together from NYU every weekend. She would dress it up. They would come around her like they were in Entourage. They would rent a car, right? Like there was this whole charade that she pulled, and she would pull up and say nothing. And the club promoters would be like, she got to be somebody because a regular bitch wouldn't pull no shit like this, right? And so it was the imagery of convincing them that she was important before she actually became somebody important that like pulls it. And so I think that, it is cool to be talking about what it means to be indie and to stay into this space of integrity. But like, what does that mean when you're genuinely just trying to get on and even be somebody that's worthy of getting the funding for that independent deal? Like I think that we can look at, and once again, not a rapper, but if you look at the career of Dawn Richard, like after she left Danity Kane and Diddy, Dirty Money, like dissipated or whatever the case may be, like she was left out there in the cold. But the idea was she had to get all of these like all of these other people, like the Issa Rae thing, where it's like you get a bunch of people that are on your level and y'all work up together, right? And so they were all doing the same thing, and she was able to create this persona and do all of these dope ass videos and wear all of these crazy costumes that help to fund that independent artist career. But if you're not somebody that people, like Bam just said, think is worthy of that, then you don't even get the chance to do the independent thing, because most people are like, yeah, you cool, you dope, but you rapping out of your car, so who gives a shit?
But that's exactly
also, I feel like people who are fans, like specifically of just indie artists, can be super toxic, and like the second you go mainstream, will dump you, will like just drop you, like, oh, you were a sellout now. It's sometimes like shunned to be successful when you come from indie.
Yeah, and I want to say, but this points out exactly what I was referring to, like where this is why people fake it till they make it, because a lot of times that is the stuff that's attractive. I remember when Raven Simone, not a rapper, was doing this music, and she was like literally, she was doing an interview, and in the interview, they were talking about like, well, you always are underneath the radar, like by a lot, like there's not a lot of these kind of paparazzi and stuff like that. And she was like, well, yeah, you can choose to do that. If I show up like in an entourage or with like a train of cars, right? If I do that, then yeah, that's going to generate a whole bunch of attention. Like I'm showing up in a stretched limo with a security team, then people are automatically going to pay me attention. But if I just show up by myself in my whatever, a little better than average car, then yeah, people aren't going to even notice. I'm going to shop at my restaurant and everything is perfectly fine. So yeah, you can play up that image, and that stuff is required, which is why these rappers take these deals in the first place, because at this point you don't want to be known as the guy who only has his video cars, whatever, right? That's why you have people like Lil Bow Wow flexing, talking about he's taking a private jet, when in reality a nigga was flying economy. You know what I'm saying? Like these things happen on Lil Mama, same thing, right? I'm on my way to an event when she's literally at a backyard of somebody's house, like at a pool party, right? Like with like little children. Like that was embarrassing as freak. But like the thing is, they all of these artists do that, right? Like they all like put on this image. Even the successful ones, the ones with a lot of money, will still go out of their way in order to appear more just highfalutin and whatever, attention grabbing, right? And the music, it's not, it does the exact same thing. You can rap about like what's actually happening in the struggle and so on and so forth, or you can go ahead and just start rapping about something highfalutin that you might not be able to afford. The vast majority of hip hop artists cannot afford a yacht, but how many of them or a private jet? But how many of these niggas will be talking about their private jets and their yachts and whatever? Like this is not a real thing. But a lot of time that's what works, because when you're rapping to men, or just when you're dealing with men, the things that pays the best is fantasy. That's why all of our toys, all of our designs, all of our entertainment, our movie choices, all this stuff is based around fantasy. You see with women that it's more like Easy Bake Oven and Barbie and all these things that are based on reality, right? And so then when it comes to hip hop, it's no different. You're sending all of this like fantasy, right? It's like about how many different women you've had in your bed at night, and in reality, you can start living it because you got that money. But some of these rappers are making these music before it even gets there. I happen to have some family members that make some music, and I remember one of them said something about drugs in my system got me numb on one of his lyrics, and I was like, "The freak are you talking about?" He's like, "No, that's just kind of what the music is. That's how this music goes." It's like, I know that's not your lifestyle, but that's exactly what you have to do. That's what sells. Like it's gross. I don't think it's necessarily a reflection of their individual lives, nor do I think it's a reflective of the average culture. I think it's a lot of time fantasy, and then you got some rich folks who can actually live out those fantasies.
When did we like put over this extra value into authenticity? And I say that not because I don't get authenticity. I get why people value it, but I don't understand the when.
Gangster rap.
Because there is maybe positive authenticity can be cool, but especially when it comes to the rap community, we glorify negative authenticity. We get upset when someone who claims to be a killer hasn't actually ended people's lives. And we praise the fact that oh yeah, Lil Boosie, he really killed people. He really went to jail for it. That makes the music better. Or we praise that T Grizzly, if you go through Joy Road, they know about T. Ask them about T. T really out here. And that I don't understand. I would much rather there be no authenticity in rap. If everybody was talking about killing, I mean at least
Finally,
negative
a 6ix9ine
authenticity.
fan. Thank you.
If nobody, if you talked about killing and you ain't killed nobody, I think that's still that's a better society. If the song still hit to me, I don't need you to actually
it's about if you're vibing to some music and you're like, damn, I really relate to this. The next extension to that is do I relate to this artist? Because you read a book and you're like, I'm gonna go to another book this artist created, and then imagine you found out it's their ghostwriter who wrote that shit, and you find out it's the kind of idea of if I'm listening to an artist and I'm like, damn, I really feel this person. You know what? I want to pay money to see them in concert. I want to know this person. I relate to this. And then you find out they didn't do that shit. So that's Drake the classic example, started from the bottom, and then he didn't really start that much from the bottom. And then you listen to it and you're kind of okay, all right, Drake, why, and then there's the fakeness. It's all right, man, come on now, you're kind of making a caricature of the life of other people and profiting off of that, and that's a grift. So it's yeah, I can like your music, but it's a grift. It's kind of how I feel about Lil Yachty, when it's Lil Yachty was honest, and then he said he didn't listen to some of these older rappers that most people in hip hop have at least listened to and heard. But when he said that shit, I was kind of damn, that's kind of that's kind of fucked up, man. You're making a lot of money off of this culture and trying to change the culture, and you didn't even listen to what came before you. And it's that element of fakeness. I think that probably stems a lot from gangsta rap, because at that point in time, it's you said, the negative authenticity. If somebody didn't do this stuff and they're claiming they did these things, I imagine the people that are around this person in the small city where this occurs are going to now look at this person like a fake. And then why would they want to bump the person's music if they know that they didn't really bang like that and they said that? But I think it's an extension of that now.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jay, and then Chris.
Sorry, Chris. I saw your hand is up. I have a quick note. To tease out more on what Wiggle was saying, it is, I think, authenticity is more linked to people get mad and angry when someone like you just pointed out, Wiggle, like Drake, he wasn't authentic enough. He really didn't start from the bottom. The higher you are on the totem pole, the more the higher the threshold is for how authentic you are, or the lower the threshold is really for how authentic you are. If you really didn't start from the bottom, then you can't say that. You're not justified in saying so. So I think authenticity, where it comes from, is how much you've accomplished and how much talent you actually have, and what have you done in your life. Can you talk the talk that you're walk, or have you walked the walk that you're talking?
Well, for sure, and then you got to think about it. Like a lot of times, these people become incredibly influential, and so then it's like, man, if we're respecting, again, part of that fantasy when it comes to like looking up to specific artists is like the idea of seeing yourself in these people and being able to say, this person made it from the same place that I'm from, and it's supposed to be inspiring. Like, hey, I can make it too. I should work hard too, right? And then when you have that sort of mentality, and then you recognize that the person who's claiming to be living this life, literally rapping about your story, your actual existence, and you find out that person isn't real, it stings a bit. Like, wait, what the freak? Like, you're making profit off of something that's like my actual lived experience that you know nothing of. Rachel Dolezal, what the freak are you talking about? Like, I think these sort of things that's going to resonate with people. We do look for authenticity, but a lot of times, because if we're trying to get, like, if music is supposed to inspire and we're trying to like get inspiration from like actual people who know the struggle, know the life, and then you find out this nigga didn't actually know the struggle and know the life, it's like, well, I'm not going to get anything from this. How can that inspire me? You're a fraud.
I think the problem is when people aren't honest about their inauthenticity. That's the problem. If you have a team of writers behind you and like this is like big conglomerate of people that make this character and you portray that character and you sing the songs and everything and everybody knows this, right? It's not an issue, right? Nobody's going to complain about that because they know what the deal is, right? Everybody knows like Beyonce has a large team of writers, and but people come in to contribute to her music, right? Nobody has an issue with that, right? Because we know what the issue is. Like, her writers are credited, the people on the album are credited. I think it's when like you have like ghostwriter situations, you have these situations where like these labels are propping up people and like portraying this fake image, right, without letting people know it's fake, and like without letting people know this person that they're propping up, they're promoting, is not like a real character, right? It took some people a while to figure out that Rick Ross like wasn't really like a gangster, right? And I think it's fine that it's not, right? Music still is good, right? He can still portray that character and like portray this image. Just let us know, right? Just like and what people will be fine. I don't think that's an issue. It's just that people go out of their way to make it seem real when it's not, and it can become problematic when people find out. And when that Drake should just let everybody know, just be real about it. Yeah, I got some writers in some of my songs. It's not that big a deal. You already figure it out a way, right? And we like it's not that big an issue. It's just when you keep faking it, you keep like hiding it, right? You're looking a little weird.
It's like when you find out Austin is not like an Indian guy named Raj, then things kind of tumble down.
Let's go to Hope and then Jay.
So I beg this question, right? If authenticity is like the thing, then are we, because I think that this pulls us back into the initial topic, are we upset when the men that are talking about doing these misogynistic, rape-like things to women aren't actually doing, like, because if we're gonna have this conversation about like being upset about shit that's authentic, should we then look into the past of these men that are saying these horrible things about women and how they beat and rape and slap a bitch, whatever the case may be? If we look into their past and it turns out that they're actually very respectable men to these women, then are we then disappointed for that? Like, are we also disappointed about that? If we look into the lives of these people who are being homo and transphobic, and we actually see that, wait, their mom, like Jay-Z's mom, is a full-blown butch lesbian, right? Like, very obvious lesbian. And, you know, like, so now if we go back into any of Jay-Z's songs, he's ever said anything homophobic or transphobic, are we disappointed because he's not upholding these things that are bad as well, right? I think that when we talk about like what's authentic and what's not authentic and who's living the life that they say that they're living, we also have to be mindful of why are you saying these things, right? Like, you're not saying these things because you necessarily think that these things are good or bad for yourself. You're saying these things because you know that these are things that people want to hear. And so what does that say about the full culture? Like, when we take this back to the initial question at whole, what does this say about us, right? The fact that we want to hear these things, the fact that these rappers and these people and these labels and these ghostwriters, they're not writing this shit necessarily because it's from their heart. They're writing it because they've looked at the social webs, they've seen the comments, they've watched the videos, and they know that this is what people want to see, this is what people want to hear, this is what people want to do. And even though they might not be doing it, you need to say it so that it can affirm all of the beliefs, right? Like, what does that say about us?
Well, I would say, Jay, Well, with
No.
Jay-Z, I feel like his mom changed, right? Like it wasn't like she was a lesbian that entire time. She came out as a lesbian to him, and then he rapped about that in his music. Like, hey, like this was a weird experience. I mean, not weird necessarily, but it was just it was actually a very affirming and uplifting of that experience. Basically saying that she finally gets to be who she really is. Like for him to have that experience with his mother at such an older age in life, like that influenced him. He probably could have been particularly homophobic, but for him in this situation, it like really gave him like sort of like an insight into this experience and the humanity of the experience for him to experience it from his own mother, right? And I would say when it comes to like the desire for authenticity within these artists and things like that, if an artist was actually saying things like that were incredibly heinous, then maybe people might not want that thing to be authentic. I think people might just be turned off. For example, that one guy, I can't even think of who it is right now, but with the dude, you don't even know. Who made this statement? Dropped a molly in her neck. I mean, and dropped a molly in her drink. And she didn't even know it. Rick Ross. There we go. He got crazy backlash for that, right? Like people were like, "Yo, this nigga's really talking about date rape here," and I put that in the lyrics as if that was okay, right? Like, so he got crazy backlash. We don't want that to be an authentic experience. In fact, plenty of people felt like that was absolutely problematic. I mean, I don't know.
That goes back to why we shouldn't censor the music. I feel like that reaction to his lyrics kind of like demonstrates that point in time how, okay, we decided this is not okay. Where, I don't know, maybe before then, like people really didn't care about taking advantage of women in that way.
But sure, but then it was censored. Like we responded by censoring it, even in response. It was like, hey, this isn't normal. This isn't acceptable. Like they needed to like abridge it, right? So then they ended up like changing the lyrics or putting out a different version of the song.
Yeah, but that was for the radio, right? We still have a record of what the song actually was. That's what I wouldn't want to change.
I guess I can look.
He lost like some endorsements and stuff.
Yeah, it was. He got like crazy backlash over that. It's problematic. We did actually backlash over that, and I think that's the proper response. And while I wouldn't advocate for necessarily censor, well, no, I'm gonna say like certain things that are absolutely heinous, calls for violence, I think are gonna be things that probably should be censored. I think the idea that if you're gonna be like literally trying to sing about like pedophilia or something, that should be censored. If you're literally making songs about actual rape, that needs to be censored. I think those kinds of things. Yeah, you're an artist that wants to go ahead and put out that information. I think you should lose endorsement deals. I think any publishers distributing that kind of filth, that person should be whatever. That person should receive some backlash too. I think those kind of artists should receive some sort of. I don't think we should just automatically, just because of the fact that you're an artist, that allows you to do and say whatever the freak you want to, regardless of how harmful it is. That's crazy.
That's why I made the argument earlier. Like depending on the platform, right? You decide on who want like your endorsement deals, what they want their artists to represent, that they're, helping like support. So like if you don't want to like if like there's horrorcore rappers out there, right? Not a lot of them are big and mainstream or on tons of platforms. They still exist. It's still, the music isn't like being like restricted from like being heard. It's just that it's on other certain platforms that you can go to and listen to if you want to listen to those things, right? If your like platform doesn't want to have certain like material like promoted or like talked about, then I think that's perfectly fine, right? It's on the individual platforms, the radio stations, whatever, TV stations, whatever. If you don't want those things on there, that's up to you. I think like it's just, again, comes to the idea of, all right, we're gonna make it like impossible for these things to be heard in any form, right? I think that gets a little weird.
Coconut Strawberry in chat says, so rape should be censored, but we shouldn't censor songs about doing drugs or shooting people?
We pro drugs and shooting people.
So no, there's a very big difference here, right? So when in the songs where they're talking about lyrics about like doing drugs and things like that, I guess there's this belief, right? And although sometimes it's not necessarily accurate, but there's this belief that's associated with it that these artists are actually rapping and telling songs about their lived experiences, and so then there's a somewhat normalization, right? People do drugs, and that's a thing. Like it's a thing that happens. But if a person is doing some sort of confession about something like rape, in which there's an actual victim, then I think that now there's an entirely different thing. Drugs are like a victimless crime in a lot of circumstances, whereas when you have something like rape, it's like, no, there is a direct victim. This is clearly something that shouldn't be normalized. You'd actually, if you're confessing something like that, should probably get some freaking time. Like, so those things are not the same in that regard.
Okay, go ahead, Wiggle.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the two big examples I can think of are like Chance the Rapper and then like Eminem, where it's like Chance the Rapper early on when he was making his music, people like love that shit. They love 10 Day into like acid rap because he was talking about his experiences and they're like, oh, this guy's that's what I experience, you know, like I, you know, smoke cigarettes and hide it from my family and like I do these kind of crazy drugs. I'm black, but I do like psychedelics and it's seen as kind of weird and that kind of stuff. And then, you know, when he got bigger, he helped out. He did Social Experiment. He did he had a group, and then they promoted other types of music. He started to become more of a public figure. Then he dropped like I think The Big Day. He started talking about like rapping about a different life, you know, getting married, etc., positivity, etc. And people are like, this is trash. People are like, I don't really like this anymore. I like the old. I like back when he was having those experiences. You have Eminem. Eminem is like not a black individual, but he raps far more heinous shit than like a lot of these rappers. He wasn't talking about just shooting people. He's talking about like stabbing people with weapons that had like STDs on them, and then like giving people who didn't know like their first shroom trip and stuff like that. And people love that shit, and they're like, oh my god, the best. I want him to relapse. That's the best Eminem. Yep. And like you know, like to answer like Hope's original thing, I'd say like it's really like, yeah, like this is what society wants. That's crazy. It's really like we like that violence. We like villains. We like these stories. People like the fact that Tay-K was like on the run when he made the song The Race. They liked that shit. They liked villains. They liked 6ix9ine, that he was going crazy on IG. He was doing all this wild shit. They liked the story, and that's part of like that part of the movement. It is a toxic thing. It is really toxic, but it's like an expression of the people in that sense. It's what they want to see. That's what they pay for, and that's why they're giving it. I do agree with Fanatiq though that if you commit certain crimes, like the individual shouldn't be like postponed from that because they're creating art. But I kind of disagree on like what happens to the art. I think the individual can go to prison or what have you, or deal with the system if they're killing people, if they're doing some heinous crimes. But like the music, perhaps there could be something else that we could do, because the music, I think, is a representation of what the people want.
I'm about to say an example, just to add to this area. Token is a white rapper who makes music kind of in the same ballpark of Eminem. It's like really hardcore rap. I think he's a dope artist. But he was talking about how there was a mass shooting, and the person who committed the act gave Token like partial responsibility for the actions he did. He said like, your music spoke to me. This is the last song I listened to before I went and committed these acts. Like it was part of his manifesto. And Token was talking about how effed up he felt about that. Like he was like, what am I supposed to do with this information that I directly, like I'm spitting whatever he calls to be his truth, and it did lead to like the harm, you know, led to deaths of like real people in the world. And it's, I don't know, I'm sure that's like a really uncomfortable thing to deal with. Like I wouldn't say that art shouldn't be made, but if it was the case, like this is like a one-off situation, but if that song was leading to like multiple acts of like people committing these types of acts, I would be okay, like if for censoring. I don't know how you could get rid of a song on the internet, but like I would be okay with that level of censoring if I knew it was causing that level of harm.
The problem is these people think that these like this is the artist. This is who the artist is, right? That is like you're not hearing from Token that what I'm rapping is just for fun, right? I'm like telling stories, or I'm like making some funny gags. I'm doing some stuff like this. This isn't like me on
more
my
like
regular,
a diary. Like
yeah.
I'm just like I'm talking about it, but I just like this is an expression, so I don't do those types of things.
Yeah, you wouldn't like you wouldn't like try to take like Wes Craven to prison because he's made all these horror movies about killing people, right? Or like censor that because some people might look at that and think like, oh, that speaks to me. That's something I want to do, right? I want to like I want to like go around in a ghost face mask and like kill like little white girls in their house, right? That doesn't like. That's not something I would put on to the artist that created the thing, right? that would, like, you know, that's fake, right? And they put out there that this isn't real. This is like a thrill ride. This is like fantasy. So like when people take that fantasy and like internalize that, right? A lot of times it's because they don't realize like that's not to be glorified. It's not something you should look up to, right? This is portraying a horrible act. It's supposed to be thrilling, right? And you're supposed to be like, especially when it comes to a horror movie, you're supposed to be scared, right? You're not supposed to be like, oh God, this is great. Like, I wanted to do this myself, right? That's not the reaction you're supposed to get out of it. Eminem made that song "Stand," right? He were like the fan. He was like, whose message and was telling him all these things, like in his music that he related to, and like Eminem doesn't like that. His life isn't that. Like these crazy songs that he sometimes make isn't his reality, right? He didn't kill his wife multiple times, right? You can't do that. It's not reality,
Also,
right? But even though Eminem's made multiple songs like
You would
that,
have like a
wasn't that
Leatherface
was that not a real song though? Was
What?
Stan not real? Like, wasn't that like not based
it's
An
a
on?
reference?
it's a representation of some of the fans he like, some of the messages and mail that he's gotten, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like a combination of all of that.
Okay.
Um,
But yeah, that's why I said in my open, people listen to lyrics and internalize them, sure, but like to put an action to that, you can't blame the artist. Like you have to take responsibility for your actions. That's ridiculous.
But I think that it's not necessarily blaming, but there is accountability, and that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Like, it's not, I don't think that the person was necessarily saying that they blame Token, right? But they, in their mind, it was like, thank you, right, for the art that you created that helped me to do whatever the fuck it was that I used before I committed this heinous crime, right? And while that might be the first time and one of the rare instances where we get to see somebody admit that, I'm sure that there are plenty more, instances where people have listened to some shit and done something, which is why, and I hate to bring this fucking up, but it makes fucking sense, which is why jokes are not just jokes, Dave Chappelle, because people go out and use those things as theses to commit fucking crime to people, right? People use those things and they turn those things into their, manifestos for why they do things. And while you may not have meant it, or the intention may not have been to turn somebody into a cold-blooded killer or to promote the idea of somebody going out and whacking the first trans person that they saw in the head, that's what happened. And so there is accountability for your platform. And it's not to say that, at this point you should start to censor it. But once again, like I said in my opening statement, don't be surprised when some shit pop off and your name is in the mix because of the shit that you created. So by all means, do what you do. Create the things that you create. Create the things that soothe your soul and get you paid and get your mama a new house. But when those things have consequences, don't be looking crazy, because you decided to create this art and put those things into the world. It's a both and situation. Do it. But then also hold yourself accountable for the things that you put out, because those things impact people differently. We're not living in a world where everybody is in their right mind and everybody's elevator goes all the way to the top. And so when you get that art and it touches somebody whose elevator goes to the top and then falls back down to the basement every time they get there, you have to be mindful of the fact that those people receive that artistry in different ways. And some people don't go to the therapist because they don't have money for that. So your music is therapy. Your poetry is therapy. Those jokes are therapy. And so when you put those things out there and you do so frivolously, thinking like, oh, everybody understands that I don't live like this, I have a cottage in Idaho. Like, no, bitch, like, no, people don't know those things. And so you got to be mindful that sometimes your art will affect people in ways that affect other people in very negative ways. And you got to hold yourself to that. You got to stand in the paint on that when you put that out there.
I agree with that.
Oh my God, Hope, you and I still need to have a personal one-on-one conversation. We're going to do that. It's going to happen.
Is there like a example? I'm sure there are. Like, I just want to know if you guys know, where it's like there's somebody that's making like music that's inciting like riots and violence, and then they acknowledge it and they just keep creating the music. They're like, I don't give a shit. I acknowledge it, and then they're still getting promoted and like they're still really popular. Like people want to have them at venues because they're making and generating profit for them, and they're still widely popular. Because I know there's artists that are like have committed crimes that like people listen to. Those artists, they still talk about them. I think like isn't like the Manson dude one of those individuals that people like read the book and they're like really into this guy's art, I know DaBaby is one of those people recently in hip hop, but is there an example of someone who's like inciting violence, saying this is what I want, this is like what I want in my music, this is what I want to happen? They're really popular. Venues still have them. They're still booking like Staples Center and stuff, you know?
I mean, it's more historical, but like NWA and Black Mafia Family, like sort of, like I guess like they built their careers on being like we are. I mean, NWA is literally niggas with attitude. Like we make music that is inciting negative violence against police. Of course, they were responding to violence that they were experiencing, but that like the music they made did, you know, whether we like it or not, like sort of antagonize the views, like added fuel to the flame of the views that people had of police. Same thing with, like I said, I mean, I'm watching the BMF show now. I knew about the Black Mafia Family since the early 2000s.
I started that. I'm on the first episode.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah.
I'm about to say the show's actually not even half as crazy as like the real life. It's actually even crazier. But they, you know, like Big Meech and all of you, like these are real, you know, these are real killers. These are real influencers in sort of the drug game, and they are like, they were for a period of time, they were like really respected as far as like culturally and societally for the things that you knew they were really doing, and people still respect them to this day. People still say Free Meech, even though you know
I see that as like a little different. The NWA is a good example, but like they were like reached out, I thought, like by the FBI, so like that's an example of like them actually having some like repercussion. Because like from my perspective, it's like, if it's always going to be an example like where it just happens, like how Chaeiry was describing, where it's like, all right, this person loses an endorsement or like people take action, then at that point it kind of seems like it is like a level of fear mongering of like something has to be done that's greater. But like in all of the scenarios, something does happen, and like these people like book less venues, their bottom line is hurt in a way. They do change their imagery. So I was wondering if there's like an example of somebody that like any examples of people in like hip hop that are popularized, are still getting all the major venues, are promoting that kind of like high level of violence. I could say like Future's an example of misogyny. Like he promotes a lot of misogyny. He promotes like drug usage. But like, what about like inciting violence, like riots, etc.?
No, you have in the punk movement where like those like bands were definitely like, I mean, Atari Teenage Riot, they literally had a song called Start the Riot, right? They were booking venues, but only venues that like those sort of bands, right? That like that sort of like community. You'd get like it gets to a certain level where venues stop booking you, even for rappers. Like if you have like, if there's the Chicago rappers, the drill rappers, right? There's some venues they just cannot go to because of the violence surrounding. There's like you get banned from certain countries even just for the lyrics. There's like precautions taken on certain artists. If you were inciting riots, inciting violence, that's like, you won't get these venue spots. You won't get these big stadium things. That's why like, Travis Scott, they create his own thing. He had his own concert where like these things were promoted at his his events, right? But you can't book an event at like a Staples Center or something that like already has its that is privately owned, right? And you're like, I want my fans to riot and like destroy property and shit. They're like, no, we can't have that. Like, you can't be here. You can't do that at Coachella. Yeah, some shows get crazy, but not to that level, right? That just doesn't happen, which is why it does seem weird that this like would come up.
I think that like, and I'm reaching. I'm reaching so hard that I'm breaking my arm. Okay, but follow me on this one. I think that the only example that I can see that would kind of sort of fall into that category where people are still being booked and they're booked mainstream would be artists who incited like socially conscious writing and sort of kind of like this space of like protest, not necessarily like riot violence or like, whatever, but it was like when you had like people like the Fugees, when you had Erykah Badu like inciting people to do like body protests and like all of these different things. And people knew what that type of music was given. Like even Lauryn Hill, when she did her Unplugged, was saying like she wrote that one song, right, but didn't release it because she was like, Rebel, right? She was like, I knew at the time if I dropped this song, I knew the impact of my words. People were not going to see it the way that I meant it. It was going to turn into some shit where motherfuckers was going to be on the streets like, yo, Lauren said, let's go to war with y'all, right? And so I think that that's a good example. While I am reaching, I recognize I'm reaching. My arm is out of the socket. I know. I think.
But would you say that's positive? Like those are positive examples, it seems.
Right, but those are positive examples. So what your question was is just like, name a couple of people who are doing this, right? Like where these things are still frowned upon, like Staples Center and shit. Like they still didn't like the fact that the Fugees had motherfuckers in there doing the most and protesting outside of whatever, but they were still getting booked. Like those people were still getting booked because I think it's not about the riot. It's about what kind of riot, right? Because it's about the publicity that comes behind it. Staples Center doesn't mind a couple of people outside with their armpits unshaven saying, you know, let's protest for the right for Black bodies to show up as Black bodies. But what they do have a problem with is the idea of motherfuckers just being out there, you know, going at each other's throat and slicing each other the fuck up for the sake of slicing each other the fuck up. Like there's a difference in that type of publicity. It's okay to be on the side of history that says, ooh, we get a chance to be in a museum somewhere and they gonna be outside the Staples Center. Look at us, like out on People magazine. But it's a whole different thing when you're on, you know, every fucking news channel right now for being the place where 8 people died and nobody really did shit about it, you know? So I think that that's a really good comparison of people who were able to do the riot thing and incite that type of space and still be invited back countless times because of the way that they were going to be perceived for those riots, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. For me, like what I take from that is like it just kind of once again seems like people choose on their own, or like by whatever means we have, the status quo right now is doing it right. Is like in those examples, the people that are creating this kind of music and are still getting booked by these venues and are still being able to be seen, we see as like positive icons. People look at like Lauryn Hill, or like they look at Erykah Badu, they look at these Wyclef Jean, etc. They look at these people as like positive influences, and then it's hard to point out like the negative influences. And then like if you're looking at like Travis Scott, he has a history of this in a lot of his concerts. I've gone to a few Travis Scott concerts. They haven't been like that, obviously, but he yells at like security that's trying to remove people for smoking weed. He'll stop the concert, yell at them, all this kind of stuff. He likes that hype movement, but like he's probably going to be punished greatly for what happened. Yeah, you're going to look and say like, well, not you, the general you is going to look and say like, there are these people that died here, and this shouldn't happen again. But how many concerts happen in the nation like all the time? And Travis Scott himself will largely be punished, hopefully, for this. People are not likely going to want like concerts where there's people that could die. They're going to want to have some level of restriction. There's going to be people in the area, like if he comes to maybe New York, there might be restrictions that New York will place on him where they'll say, oh, it's a Travis Scott concert, we want extra security, we want to make sure that we don't get this blowback, and etc. And like from my viewpoint, it's like adding restriction is an example of like a failed system, where this seems like a system that has been largely successful.
Go ahead. Who is gonna?
I was going to say, wait, how could adding restriction be an example of a failed system? It would seem like adding restrictions is a response to a typically ever-changing and growing system, right? Things change and develop all the time, and we have to adjust accordingly. So if you're adding restrictions and an adjustment to what you're now recognizing as a problem, that sounds like actually a successful system, right?
No. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that when you're adding restriction, it's addressing the fact that your system has failed. So you want to add something to make it better.
Got you.
Go ahead, I hope.
I was gonna say, I want to drive this back to like once again like the example of what we think about the ways in which we look at positives and negatives, right? Because when we think about entertainers like Michael Jackson, like once again reaching so far that my arm is out of the socket. Okay, I recognize this, but follow me, don't follow me, but follow me. When we look at concerts, like, you know, the greats like Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, in some spaces, and don't come for me because bitch, she does have the influence, Beyonce, right? Where we have multiple people every show, right? Like, regardless of the fact that these are contained and very, whatever spaces, people be falling out, people are dehydrated, people are, on all type of drugs because they want to be able to feel the moment in a better way. Like, these things happen in those spaces too. But I think that it's all about the publicity that you can get based off of based off of who's doing it. A lot of the reason why these rappers are getting a bad rap is because the assumption is that they're up to some mischief and these things are leading to these other things, right? When you go to a Michael Jackson concert, even if people are up to some mischief, you're not thinking like, oh, a person is going to the Michael Jackson concert to start some shit. You're not looking at people who are Beyonce fans and saying like, oh, they up to some shit. They probably, whatever. And it could very well be the case for both of those audiences, right? We all know that the Beehive is fucking crazy. So, who knows like what is going on in that audience. But I think that the ways in which the repercussions are falling are different because of the thought process of social order behind rappers, right? And especially behind rappers that are Black males or Black male adjacent or rap about, the Black struggle or the Black, experience. There's just this understanding that we are up to no good when we're in spaces like that. And so whatever happens to us happened to us for an inherently bad reason and not just because the space was just poorly monitored. And I think that we need to think about that too when we're talking about the ways in which we discuss bad behavior in some of these open spaces and concerts.
I know y'all saw old buddy jumping up on the crane.